Can you share a bit about yourself?
Absolutely. Well, good morning, afternoon, evening, everyone. I'm so excited to be here. I am Roxy Indebumadu, and currently I am at Microsoft as a senior customer success manager, where I have been for the last 3 years of my career. Prior to Microsoft, I was at a cybersecurity startup, and prior to that, I actually studied healthcare and nursing and made the grand pivot into technology for reasons that will make sense a little bit later. But if I have to go back to the root of who I actually am, I graduated from Howard University here in Washington, D.C. I am in the D.C. area. I grew up between the States and Nigeria. Most of my family is based in Nigeria, as well as London and Dublin. I have a little bit of family there as well. But if I have to look at who I am at the core, I'm someone who really cares about people. In most of my roles, I've always had proximity to people, whether that's being elected as a councilwoman in the state of Maryland and having a constituency the size of 68,000 people, whether that's being a reverse mentor to people like Kathleen Hogan or Jean-Philippe Courtois, who are two executive vice presidents at Microsoft, or whether it's for my love for golf. I know, anomaly there. Being my authentic self on the golf course it makes a lot of sense because there are not many women on the golf course. So whether it's my love for golf, that's another big deal, a part of who I am. Being an advocate for Africa, I've spent a lot of time in Nigeria and Kenya specifically working on STEM curriculum and STEM education on behalf of small children out there to make sure that they too see that technology will be the great equalizer for them to get opportunity one day, or whether it's working with federal agencies and meeting Secretary Carson and the likes of others. For me, at my core, I am a person who embodies the fullness of who I am, and not someone who hides from that either, not someone who tries to fit into societal expectations or societal norms. I think throughout my life and throughout my journey, I had a very interesting childhood, but for the most part, it was pretty traumatic. And I had to learn really early on why I was special, what was unique about me, what was it that I was brought here to do in the world, what was my place, what made me special. I had to learn all of those things very quickly to be able to harness them to make me who I am today. So when I think about who is Roxy, Roxy is somebody who's authentic, who cares about people, and who just likes to have a good time, who likes to have fun and likes to empower people at her core. So that's a little bit about me. And I think throughout my presentation, you'll learn more about my story and how I grew to be this energetic, authentic, I guess you would say, self-fulfilled person who really is courageous, but really understands the empathy of leadership and why it's important to have a significant amount of empathy and courage and authenticity, and why that matters in the workplace. So if you go to the next slide, I will kick things off with one of my very, very favorite quotes. I have a couple of authors that I look up to in my life, Coco Chanel being one of them, not because I love Chanel, that's one of them, but because when you read Coco Chanel's book, she has a really fantastic pocketbook that I urge everybody to read. And it's filled with little quotes that really embody authenticity. In one page, Coco said, "My life didn't please me, so I created my own." And that rings true to my story wholeheartedly. And I think a lot of people on the line today can resonate with that. Something about life that doesn't please you, that you feel like is too small, that you feel like is not enough, that you feel like sometimes when you show up, there's more that you have to offer, there's more that you have to give, or there's more that you can share of yourself. Then you start to ask yourself, well, then what am I waiting for? Why don't I create those experiences? When I started at Microsoft 3 years ago, I started as a customer success manager, and I honestly felt like the role was quite boring, to be honest with you. That's just how I felt. I felt like, okay, I'm here at this $1 trillion company. It's a great company. Okay, this is great. I have customers in the federal space. This is fantastic. I'm close to people. But I felt like that wasn't all of the experience that I was looking for. I was looking for more. Like, how can I take me and everything that I am and everything that I've learned through my life, whether that's perseverance, whether that's courage, whether that's in leadership, and how can I create this experience at Microsoft that embodies who I am, that embodies what will make me happy? So that's what I did. I started working on projects in Kenya, like I mentioned earlier. I started raising my hand and volunteering to mentor different types of people. I started raising my hand to find out about different parts of the business that I was curious about, that I felt that I would be a little bit more fulfilled through. And I also ran for office. I said in 2019, I've got more to give. I've got more leadership to offer the world. I've got more to share with the community. I've just got more. So how can I be more? So I created my ideal life that I'm living today. If you go to the next slide, I'll talk more about what is authenticity, because I think in order for us to show up courageously and show up as our full self, you have to start to understand, what is authenticity to us? To each person, authenticity looks very, very, very different. But I want you to think about it in three different buckets. Number one, everybody has something that makes them unique. For me, I like to think that's my personality, that's my fullness. It's the way that I view the world. It's being a deep empath. It's being able to hear somebody else's problem and take that problem on as if it were my own. However, not letting that baggage come home with me at night. It's being able to feel somebody else's pain as if it's my own pain. That's what makes me unique. It's being able to understand what bothers people, being able to not only listen, but hear what somebody is actually and truly saying. That's what makes me unique. It's embracing what makes you different and harnessing that as your strength. I think a lot of us go through this path in life, and I think this is, if I'm not speaking to anybody, at least I'm speaking to myself today. I think a lot of us go through this path in life where we were told that we have all these things that are our weakness, that make us not as strong as we'd like to believe, that weigh us down. And we've been conditioned to view those things as weaknesses and not as strengths. We've made these agreements with ourselves to say, yes, maybe me being so jolly and energetic first thing in the morning isn't such a good thing. I'm just too much. Maybe my opinions in the workplace are just too much. Maybe I shouldn't share them. Maybe my speaking up to offer my ideas are just too much. Maybe I should just stay a little quiet. When those are actually, in fact, things that are your strengths. I've learned to understand that my input, the fact that I always have an idea, the fact that I always have something to say, that is my strength. I've learned that because oftentimes, more than few, there's somebody else in that meeting room where I'm sitting in that's thinking the same thing, that's too afraid or too scared to raise their hand and say the exact same thing. So my authentic self is harnessing my uniqueness and harnessing all the things that make me different, that I know that people have said that I'm not so comfortable with, and actually turn them into my strengths. The second part is vulnerability. I think we've been conditioned to view vulnerability as a weakness in itself, honestly. A lot of people say at work you need to show strength. You need to be strong and tough and macho, macho man. When really that's not always the answer. I think we live in a world where people are craving that connection. People are craving that vulnerability from their leaders, from the people that they seek to connect with. People are craving that. People want to see you have the courage to let go and invite them in. Because when you start to take people on that journey of life that you're on, with authenticity, people start to feel a lot more included. They start to feel invited into your inner space. They start to feel invited with a seat at your table. And you get to bring that table consistently and keep going and keep going and keep going. And here you are cultivating this community filled with authenticity so that when you show up as your full self, courageous in everything that you are, with your empathetic leadership, people understand what type of leader you are, and they understand that they can too be vulnerable with you. So having the courage to let go and let people in, it's important for authenticity. It's important for your authentic self to show up as who you truly are in the workplace. The last part that I think a lot of people make a lot of excuses for, frankly, is that unapologeticness. Man, that's a tough one. Ooh, that's a tough one. Unapologetic. I am sitting before you today with no makeup on, and that's pretty unapologetic for me, y'all, because I love makeup. Not because I'm hiding from anything, but because I really love makeup. I think it's fun. I think it's part of being a woman. I enjoy it. It's exciting. And I am having an allergic reaction right now. So like I now know what acne feels like, but I'm unapologetic about it because you know what? I look good in my pink glasses. I look good in my pink sweater. I am unapologetic about me and being me and showing up as me. And that's okay that everybody doesn't receive that. That's okay that it doesn't land with everybody. I've accepted that. That's fine because at the end of the day, the people who I land with far out exceed the people who I don't. And the people that I don't land with, we'll talk about that later on in the presentation. There's a reason why I don't land with them. And I accept that. And I'm unapologetic in the fullness of who I am because at the end of the day, that's me. And I can be nobody else but myself. So I urge all of you, be unapologetic about who you are. And don't worry about the people that don't accept that. Don't worry about the people that can't see that for themselves because most of the time, people are just really trying to figure out how to also be unapologetic, just like you are. If you go to the next slide, I'll tell you a story that wraps all of this all into one. So if you see here on the picture, and you'll see a lot of pictures of me today, not because I think I'm beautiful, even though that's part of it. It's because it really it really drives the message home.
Because you are beautiful.
Thank you. If you look at this picture, it's me sitting on a chair next to Kathleen Hogan. Kathleen Hogan is the Chief People Officer of Microsoft, currently Executive Vice President of Human Resources. I met her within my first year when I joined the company. And this story really rings true to empathetic leadership and courage and authenticity. The first year I was at Microsoft, I kept raising my hand and asking people, how can I get involved? How can I get involved? I was a bad public speaker, y'all. Like, and today I'm still not convinced that I'm a great one, but it's okay. The jury's still out. I really wanted a new challenge. I wanted to jump right into the realm of public speaking. I wanted to put myself out there. And I felt like the only way to fight my fears and to face those fears was to be courageous and just put myself out there and throw myself in the deep end. So I reached out to a group in Microsoft and I said, hey, do you have any opportunities to host a fireside chat or to participate in any way? I'm very interested. I want to be involved. They said, okay, Roxy, we'll keep you in mind. Okay. Couple weeks later, they reached out and said, "Hey, hey, Roxy, there's an opportunity for you to possibly participate in a fireside chat and interview Kathleen Hogan at Microsoft Ready. Microsoft Ready is a huge conference that we have every year for our Microsoft organization where we like fly 40 to 50,000 of our employees out to Las Vegas. And it's a big conference where we talk about what's new, how we ended the fiscal year, like different types of updates like that. And so they said, would you be interested? I said, oh my gosh, are you kidding me? I mean, yes, of course I'd be interested. I was scared out of my mind. Like I was really scared. And so that began this journey. First, I had an introductory call with Kathleen Hogan's chief of staff. Her name is Allison Thompson. Fantastic, phenomenal woman. Absolutely adore Allison. She's great. Had a call with her to just kind of get the lay of the land, try to understand how the questioning would go, how the formatting would go, what would be comfortable. The next conversation was a call with me and Kathleen, and she wanted to understand some of the questions that might have been asked. Fast forward to the day of the actual event. So the day of the event, you could tell that she was a little bit nervous because she's a chief people officer. And if you were a chief people officer, you'd be nervous too. You don't know what's going to happen in this audience. You don't know what people are going to ask you. You don't know if people are going to try to hold you accountable for something that you're unaware of that's going on in the company. Just a lot of emotions, a lot of things flowing. So I felt responsible. I felt responsible for her experience because I was just like, you know, gosh, Roxy, if this thing goes left, that's your job, man. So you might want to figure out how to make this work. And I also felt that she was nervous. So we breezed through the questions. She answered them really, really quickly. And then we had time for Q&A, more time than we anticipated for it. She ended up knocking it out of the park. She did a fantastic job. And at the end of the session, I noticed the relationship that people had with her. So when people would come up to the stage and ask her a particular question, it's almost like they had this perception of her already. Like, you're not for the people. You don't care about us. You're HR. Like they had this perception. And I was curious about that perception because I didn't like it. I felt like it was unfair because here's this human who, yes, she's leading a company, $1 trillion company, but it's not it's not her fault everything that happens within the company, even though she is responsible because she's the head of HR. So here I am, feeling deep empathy for this person and this interaction, this experience that she had with people. So at the end, I walked up to her and I said, Kathleen, it was really great meeting you. This was a fantastic time. I think you did a really great job, but I have one question for you. And she goes, yes, Roxy, what's your question? I said, can I be your reverse mentor? She said, I guess, sure. And that was exactly how she responded. And I said, okay, I would really, really like to be your reverse mentor because I think there's a lot that I can offer you, but I also think there's a lot that I can learn from you. So here you have this woman who has a certain type of relationship with the audience that is a little bit more reserved, that has gone through a lot in her life, that has beat cancer and survived and did this all while leading HR. I wanted to learn what it looked like to work with her. And I wanted to bring the fullness of my relatability from an audience perspective and the things that I felt like I could help her do, which was soften the way that she interacted with the audience and soften her relatability to change the perception that she had within our company. And that's what I wanted to provide for her. So I asked her. So that began our journey together. Since then, Kathleen, I've been her reverse mentor for 3 years now, and we've worked together throughout different things that have popped up throughout the company where she'll ask my perspective on, Roxy, how does this land? And what I think is so beautiful about this story is here you are, two people from two opposite spectrums of the world. She was raised in the Midwest. She's at a different part in her career, more seasoned than I am. Here I am, an African-American young woman from Nigeria, with no siblings, that's new to technology, that had no computer science experience whatsoever, but just has this grave experience with people and what it means to land with an audience and what it means to fully show up as you are and what it means to have that relatability, have that vulnerability and let people in. And it started our journey together. And what I think is so beautiful that I want you to take away, it just shows you the ability that when you are operating in your authentic self, when you courageously show up, you don't know how much you might be able to help another person, how much beautiful relationships might blossom from that, how much you might be able to drive forward movements within a company forward just from where you are. Sometimes we don't always have to be an exec to make change. We don't always have to be a manager to make change. Sometimes it's about the way that you influence other people by just them experiencing the fullness of who you are and that rubbing off on them, which gives them permission to now show up as they are. So I wanted to share that story with you because I think it's so beautiful and I think it's a testament of how that empathetic leadership and that courageousness and that authenticity can rub off on other people and create meaningful relationships and drive empowerment at levels that you might not be able to imagine. So with that being said, I'm going to walk you how to do that in 3 simple steps. They're going to be quick. I know I just spoke for a really long time, but they're going to be quick. Step 1, I really want people to get into the mindset of being personable. Being personable directly relates to being authentic. If it's your personality to wake up in the morning and get on a call and drink bone broth, then do that. If it's your personality to talk with your hands, which it is my personality to talk with my hands, I didn't do it as much today because it can be a little distracting. But if it's your personality to talk with your hands, do just that. I like to talk with my hands because I like to get my nails done. I think my nails are beautiful. And I think everyone should see my nails because they're beautiful. That's just how I feel. So if that's your personality, embody who you are. Showcase that personality. Start being all of who you are. And you can do that in your everyday phone calls. You can walk around with your cell phone like this and talk with your hands and act as if the world is seeing your beautiful nails because it makes you feel good. If that means that you're sitting on the phone, being who you are and saying, good morning, everyone, how are you? Playing jazz music in the background, getting everybody be who you are so that people know what to expect from you, so that you can get away from that imposter syndrome. Because In the beginning of this, 33% of you said that imposter syndrome is something that holds you back from being authentic. Well, if you start showing up as who you are and being personable in the fullness of who you are, so people know what to expect, you don't have to worry about imposter syndrome, because the moment that you show up as somebody that you're not, somebody will call you out about it. Somebody will sit there and say, you know, Jennifer, you're being mighty dry today. Is everything okay? Do we need to talk? You know, call me after this. Because people will start to notice what authentic you looks like, and that's what they'll start to expect. That's what they'll start to hold you accountable as. So stop impersonating, stop being what you think society wants you to be, and start being personable. Talk with your hands, take up space, like, you know, like spread your arms out, put the shoulders back, like, you know, just show up, be you, snap a little, like, be personable. Next I'll go to step 2. Step 2 is my personal favorite. It's really my personal favorite. And I have to say it's my personal favorite. And I include this really, really beautiful picture of me because it embodies my point in itself. To be an empathetic leader, you have to understand the truth behind empathy and leadership. People can only meet you as deeply as they've met themselves. Whew, oh my gosh, that quote gives me chills, y'all. It gives me chills. I have goosebumps.
Same.
People can only meet you as deeply as they've met themselves. So when you start this journey for authenticity, when you start this journey of courageousness, you have to understand that everybody's not going to receive you. Why won't everybody receive you? Because everybody hasn't met themselves as deeply as you have. In this picture to the right, it's a picture of me. It's one of my favorite pictures of me. But it embodies a fearless, confident, courageous woman who's authentic, who knows that she is all that in a bag of chips and have the receipts to back it. And who knows that sometimes people may try to label her, but that's not my business because I've met myself very, very, very deeply. I'm self-aware of my weaknesses and what people may think are my weaknesses and what people perceive as my flaws. I am very self-aware of those things. So I know that when certain people perceive and receive me in a particular way, I understand where that's coming from because they haven't met themselves as deeply as I've met myself. They haven't spent long nights crying, wondering what is your purpose in life. They haven't figured out why they're on earth. They haven't figured out what makes them tick and what makes them drive and what's their why. They haven't figured out those things. So when they do meet me with that aggression or that judgment, all I can do is have empathy for them because I know that they haven't met themselves as deeply as I have. I know that. And I'm okay with that. And so I accept it for what it is. And I have empathy for those people because at the end of the day, it takes hard work to meet yourself on a very deep level. It takes hard work to be self-aware and to understand what are some of the flaws that you have. It takes work to understand what it means to show up as the badass that you are. It takes a lot of work. And everybody's not in the capacity to be able to do that work at the stage of life where they currently are. So you have to be okay with that. And if you take nothing, just remember that people can only meet you as deeply as they've met themselves. In every workplace scenario, when you may not align with a colleague, a coworker, when a customer may not understand where you're coming from, take a step back and remember, man, that quote from Roxy, can only meet you as deeply as they've met themselves. This person hasn't met themselves that way. This person isn't approaching it from the perspective that I am. So let me step back and have grace and empathy for them, and then try to put myself in their shoes, and now come back and approach the situation with leadership. If anything, step 2, that's my favorite. Now we're going to move on to step 3 because I feel like we went a little deep on that one. So we're going to pick it back up. Step 3. A lot of people are uncertain. A lot of people don't understand what drives them because in order for you to be authentic, you got to understand what drives you. That's the brink of authenticity. That's at the heart of authenticity. It's who are you and what drives you to wake up every morning. For some of you, it might be love. I mean, for me, it is. For some of you, it might be love, even though I'm not in love right now, but still, you get the point. Some of you, it might be love. It might be your kids. It might be, out of being a part of something that's bigger than yourself. That's what that might be for you. But you have to figure out what drives you and you have to latch on to that. what drives me particularly, 2 years ago, before I ran for office, you can see it says your why. I attended a session with Senator Tim Scott, and he asked me, he said, Roxy, what is your why? I want you to write down and bring this piece of paper back to me tomorrow, because before you run for office, I need you to figure out why. Why are you running for office? What drives you? Before you go work at Microsoft, I need you to figure out why. Why do you want to be there? Why do you want to work with customers? Why do you want to work in technology? What is your why? So I wrote this note to myself, and I explained how growing up between two different worlds was very difficult. I was young. My mom wasn't in the picture. I wasn't raised by parents. I didn't have siblings. I went to private school, and I was one of three Black kids in that private school. Everybody had their two-parent household, and their loving parents picked them up from soccer practice. My mom was never anywhere to be found. I was always the kid that was left after school, that was late, that everyone judged, who felt like, gee, what's going on in her household? My middle school tried to take my mom to court and take custody of me when I was younger. I I didn't have an advocate. Different things happened to me in my life that were traumatic, that I won't go into, that I wish somebody would have advocated for me. So I promised myself when I got older, I would be the advocate that the little girl in me, the little girl that's on the fire truck, that looks shy, timid, coy, scared, nervous, yet full of life and excited. She wanted an advocate. And I promised myself that I was going to always be that advocate that that little girl on this fire truck bus thing always wanted. And that was my why. That is what drove me, because I knew that there were other people, whether boys or girls, that were in similar situations where they didn't have people to advocate for them, whether they did have parents or not. They didn't have people that were strong enough to speak on their behalf, that were courageous enough to fight the fight, that were courageous enough to show up and ask the tough questions that needed to be asked in the workplace, that were courageous enough to show up in those environments that were male dominated and continue to dominate as women and speak for women. They didn't have that. And so I promised myself that I would be that. So I figured out what drove me. I figured out what drove me by writing down my why, by exploring my story, by meeting myself deeply, by understanding what does it look like to be who Roxy really wants to be. And I figured that out. And I want you guys to figure that out. I want you guys to understand what drives you. Because when you understand what drives you, and I have a good book that helps with this, that Satya Nadella is our CEO, his chief of staff, Jason Grafey. If you don't know him, he's a phenomenal person. He's the VP and advisor to Satya. He recommended a book. It's called The Second Mountain. And The Second Mountain talks about your first mountain and your second mountain, and how when you're on the first mountain, you're driven by ego. You're driven by things like financial security, the cars, the house, the stability. You're driven by these things. But when you reach that second mountain is all about something that's greater than yourself, whether that's your kids, love, a purpose, a mission. That was my second mountain. And some people may never make it to the second mountain, and that's okay. But I figured that out, because by me figuring out what drives me, being the advocate that I always wish I had, that enables me to always be authentic. Because when I'm not authentic, when I don't courageously show up, what I think to myself is, Roxy, who are you letting down? You're letting down yourself and the millions of little girls that look up to you, the millions of people who you're doing this on behalf of. This second mountain that you're on, you're letting that mountain down. You're letting that mountain crumble and erupt. And if that's not what you want to do, then you got to figure out what drives you and be authentic. So if anything, with step 3, figure out what drives you, and do away with the uncertainty, do away with the societal norms and all of that other stuff, and just figure out what drives you, and operate in that fullness. I'm going to leave you with why it's important to authentically show up, and that's my next slide. We talked about this a little. It's important because each and every one of you on this call, you have an impact on the world. What that impact looks like is up to you. You have the power to move the world in directions that you don't even know that you're capable of, whether that's in your role, whether that's through your customers, whether that's by being a woman sitting in the room, whether that's asking questions that other people are afraid to ask, whether that's just smiling at a stranger. You have an impact on the world. That's why it's important for you to show up. It's important for you to unleash who you are destined to be. Each and every one of us is destined to be something great. We are not born to play it small, like my good friend Marianne Williamson says. She's my friend in theory. We are not destined to play it small. We're destined to be who we're meant to be. That's by figuring out what drives us so that we can authentically show up and unleash that. Because in order for you to reach true happiness, you have to accept who you are and where you're going. And that journey looks different for all of us, but you have to accept it and you have to be excited through the ups and the downs. I mean, and we all have downs. I cried last night. I had a tough council hearing and I felt like everybody was ganging up against me. I was like, you guys are playing politics with people's lives and I'm not here for that. And I had to cry. And then I woke up this morning and I was like, you know what? We're gonna fight and conquer. We're gonna step back. We're gonna get all our emotions out. We're gonna cry it out, and then we're gonna live to fight another day and represent the people that we're here to represent. And that's what makes me happy. That's what makes me be able to smile every day because I accept that my life is going in a particular direction and I don't worry about what's the next role, Roxy? Where do you hope to see in 5 years? I don't worry about that. Other people may disagree, and I understand, but I don't worry about that. So I'm going to bring us to our next poll, our last poll, and I'm going to close us out with a quote that is my favorite quote in the whole wide world. Jennifer, will you do us the honors and do us the poll?
All right. So what is it that you have realized today? Is it, I am worth sharing with the world? I need to get out of my own head. That's me sometimes. Authenticity makes me unique. Or that courage is contagious. I don't know if I set this up to answer all four, but I think you hit all of them, Roxy.
Yeah, I think we did.
15, 20 seconds to get your answers in and we'll see what everyone else is thinking. I think I also realized that I need to take clips from this webinar and have them be my morning affirmations.
Oh, you are the sweetest.
All right, I'm going to go ahead and close this out and publish the results. So we got 6% said, I am worth sharing with the world. I hope it's because everybody already knew that, and that's why it was only 6%. I need to get out of my own head. 50% of our audience said that. 22% said authenticity makes me unique, and 22% said courage is contagious. What you think about that?
I think that's spot on. That I need to get out of my own head. That one was really the highest one because I felt like that's where I was so many years ago. I was in my own head, and that's what imposter syndrome does to people. It gets you stuck in your head, and it gets you to doubt who you are and who you want to be and who you're capable of being. So I love that people are realizing that they need to get out of their head and that authenticity is what makes you unique, and that as you start to become more courageous, it becomes contagious and other people start to catch on, and we all know that we are worth sharing with the world. So I love it. I am going to close this out with my quote. This is my favorite quote. It's from a book called, I'm sorry, you guys know I'm a book hoarder. I literally order books from Amazon and just order them because I love books. And this is from one of my all-time favorite books. It's by Adam Grant. He wrote a book called The Originals. The Originals talks about harnessing your authenticity and just really unleashing it to the world. And this is the quote that he had in the first chapter by George Bernard Shaw. And the quote says, "The reasonable man adapts himself to the world. The unreasonable one persists in trying to adapt the world to himself. Therefore, all progress depends on the unreasonable man." That goes to show you sometimes it's not always going to make sense. It's not always going to be reasonable. Everybody's not always going to relate. But understand that all the progress depends on the people that we can relate to, because those are the ones that are not trying to conform to societal standards. Those are the ones that are being authentic and being the fullness of who they are. So thank you.
Man, Roxy, that was